everybody. Welcome to the 100th episode of the XP Billionaires podcast. My name is Rafe Thegram. I am super thrilled to be back. I'm here all the time, so I don't know what back really means. But regardless, still super excited that we have gotten to this huge, huge milestone. And I get to do that with my co hosts, Sky Knight and the Mel Zerker. We've had so much fun over this past while. And, while Mel's ghost was only here for the first half, the real Mel is now here. And we are just having so much fun. And I hope we get to continue doing that in the future. So
100 more. 100 more.
Yep. That's awesome.
We still have so many topics left. I'm so excited. Like, I look at the list sometimes and I'm like, oh, it's going to be so good.
I know, right? And like, there's going to be so many more that are going to occur to us. Like, it really is the topic that just RPGs are a topic that keeps on giving.
And I could keep thinking of a whole bunch of game developer companies are all like, oh yeah, RPGs are a dead thing of the past. Yeah, no, not at all, because we're still going, and we're still going pretty damn hard. So, take that.
Yeah, I mean, 100 episodes later, we're like, our ability to come up with topics hasn't even really slowed down. That's the wild bit.
I know it's been so much fun. It's so great. And you know what? I can't help but not only thank you guys as my co-hosts, but all you listeners out there. The more people who are listening to this, the more I enjoy doing this show, and you guys are really helping me with that. And I know that, at least me personally, I don't interact as much as I do on social media these days. There's been a lot going on. I try to do a little bit more as I go, but it's trickier. Mostly I'm just doing screenshots of whatever game I'm playing right now. But that doesn't mean you guys can't reach out to me. Please do. I do like hearing from all of you, and I will respond to you if you have questions or you want to talk anything gaming. So please do. It's very important that you guys know that.
Yeah, I mean, I never shut up, so feel free. I'll talk to you.
Well, I guess that makes us a good balance then.
I'll give an awkward silence to any message I get, just like an awkward emoji.
Nice.
That'll be my part to keep the balance. So, if you want an awkward emoji.
Oh man, that's great. All right. So clearly we're in all great spirits right now. So this is awesome. It's nice and celebratory. Normally with a 100th episode, we'd consider doing something fun or ridiculous for a milestone like that. And while I think we can still have a fun conversation today, we are going to do an episode that, well, we've been wanting to do for a long time, and it is not as fun and crazy and ridiculous as it could be, but I think it's still going to be a good episode. And as an episode 100, I feel like this is going to be really special. So, so this week, using our love of RPGs, we want to have a discussion on the effects of gaming on our mental health. This really is just a topic that's hit very close to home for all of us. And I really, really hope that this episode can be helpful to not just each other, but to all of our listeners out there who struggle with any different type of mental health issues. We are there for you. We listen. We're here. We're always willing to help. That's one of the things that we'll always take seriously.
You got it.
So I guess the first question I want to bring up is, how do you guys feel games contribute generally to improving your own mental health? So Mel, why don't you start us off?
Alrighty. Well, I work in mental health. I have for the last 10 years or so, and I've always really believed that gaming is a great space to explore themes and issues that you face in real life in like a safe, mediated way. So maybe I am being bullied in my real life, and being able to explore that through gaming is maybe a safe way to explore solutions and to come up with ways to deal with that problem. I tend to do a lot of practicing skills that help me in the real world. A lot of games now have like, the Paragon Renegade thing, right? Helping you understand how to converse and how to like be empathetic to different people and understand what it is that you can say that will be helpful. And I think especially the really, really narrative RPGs have been great for that. There are actually some really cool research projects happening around the world where they are integrating playing video games with therapy sessions. And they're seeing amazing results. So I mean, I think it's all a matter of just considering it as a way of fuller engagement, like they say people learn by watching or reading or doing whatever, but really inhabiting someone and being that person really gives you a different perspective. um Beyond that, when my mental health gets bad, I know some people are really into like kind of like a mindless game that just can fill the space and give them something to keep their hands busy. That's not my thing. um I tend to game when I'm feeling generally moderately well. But I know that some people like, having a space where you can just, distract yourself from what's going on, have a bit of a break, can be really, really positive. So, like anything, I think it's about balance. It's not about running away from all of your problems. It's about taking a break so you can come back fresh. So that's my general belief for mental health and gaming. Whenever I'm at conferences and things like that, I always say that I'm an advocate for gaming and mental health. And there's always the questions about, like last episode, about addiction and things like that. Um, and just a lot of it comes from people who have no idea, right? They've heard the stories, but I think like certain games definitely do have negative outcomes and certain games have really positive outcomes.
Well, yeah, and I mean, what gets reported in the media tends to be the most extreme things, right? Like the most negative. You hear about those people who are, gaming 20 hours a day, and people look at that and go like, "Oh, video games are bad." And it's just like, no. Like most things can be harmful in extremes. Like that's not specific to video games. But these are the stories that people hear because they're sensationalized by the media, and they don't hear about the 90% or more people who get really positive things about in brought into their lives by gaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
exactly. Like like I know a big one is like socializing, right? A ton of people find a community of peers to connect with in a way that they can't in, the physical world. I hate saying real world because, I've had some very real experiences in games, but
sure, yeah, exactly. In the analog world, so to
there
you
you
could call
go.
like there's tons of stories now about people who met their who met their significant others playing games, or made very good friends, and all those things. But if you're not already in the community, you don't hear those stories. The media is not interested in those stories.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
only they only are when it gets to these really negative extremes, and that really just skews people's perceptions.
No, it absolutely does. I mean, everyone's going to have a narrative to fill when it comes to their opinion towards this topic. And if you have a platform to do it that just lets you progress play your narrative the way you want it to, and that's really unfortunate. And yeah, all I can tell you guys is whatever you hear in the news, do your own research. Make sure well, no matter what the topic is, do your own research. Always seek a second opinion if it's something extreme, and make that educated decision for yourself. It doesn't matter what decision you come out with, even if it's one that is that is disagreed with by others. At least as long as you've done your research and you believe this to be the case, that's fine. But at the same time, do keep an open mind from others' opinions. That's the only way we can continue to have a dialogue. moving on to my effects on my own mental health. Um, for me, I tend to consider video games as a way to kind of balance out my overall mood. So if I'm feeling bored, I'm feeling, down, I'll play something fun. I'll play something familiar. I'll play, just something that makes me feel a lot better. You know, if it's sadness, I'll play with a game that has characters I love interacting with. If I'm angry, I tend to put something that's very actiony, could be somewhat a little bit more violent just to get my frustrations out. Like we were saying later, like I am a firm advocate for the argument that violent video games are not the primary cause of real life violence, but they're more of a therapeutic method to kind of quell those violent thoughts in your head. I've it works for me. Like I I'm not a violent person per se. I always think I want to knock someone's block off half the time whenever I get frustrated, but I'm never going to actually do it. Or maybe I'm a bit of a wuss like that. I'll admit, but being able to have a scenario where I can just get that out of my system in a way that's one, not going to hurt anybody, and two, not illegal. I think this is one of the things that video games are really, really capable of doing. And, like Mel was saying, we've seen studies that's showing that this has, that there are benefits to things like this.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's been very clear from very early on that, that violent video games have never resulted in an increase of violence generally.
No,
Like the very earliest studies since, violent video games really started being a thing, like have always shown that. And, like we need to stop looking at certain emotions as bad things, you know? Violence typically is an expression of, it can be of anger, of frustration, of like uh, resulting from things that are naturally frustrating or anger inducing. Like, yeah, you can't go knock someone's block off, like you said, but like, and you're not going to, but those emotions still need to go somewhere. They need to be vented somehow. And, you know, for some people, it's just, ranting on the phone to their best friend. But you know what? That's not always an option. Your best friend may not be available, like you may any number of reasons could not be available. And so, having something to vent that frustration, for some people it's exercise, but for other people it can be video games, and that's great.
no, absolutely. Like everybody's got their own way to vent their problems, at least hopefully. And you got to find yours, and you don't let stuff stay bottled in. And that, like, I can't stress that enough. I know we've all done it in the past. We're all guilty of it. I'm still guilty of it at times, but if if we do, it's only going to cause you problems in the future. So really, really try to identify the best way for you to express yourself when you're feeling pent up, one way or the other.
Yeah, and it may not look the same as what other people do, but as if it works for you and it's not hurting yourself or others, then go for it.
Absolutely. All right, Sky, why don't you tell us some of your experiences with your gaming, with your mental health?
Yeah, well, my perspective's a little different because of, because of the condition I have, right? So, um, basically what video games are for me is a break from my own brain. I have ADHD. My brain is basically a hyperactive hamster running in one of those like hamster balls, but that ball is in a small box, so it's constantly bouncing off the sides. I know it's a weird analogy, but that's the best way I can think of to describe of how the inside of my brain works. like how my thought process works. And the thing about video games is that they so completely engage me, like on a visual level, on a physical level, with the controls, you know, on a psychological, mental, emotional level with narrative based games in particular. It allows me to forget, or at least set aside for a time, things that are bothering me, or just, diffuse my hyperactivity. Well, like you said, I guess, give it an outlet, right? So it's a huge self-care thing for me. And I honestly, I get so overwhelmed all the time because trying to express myself to other people, to try and interact in this world, which is not set up for people with brains like mine, with my particular gender identity and, my sexual orientation. Like I have all these marginalizing factors that make it very difficult for me to relate to other people. So it's this constant backup of frustration and unnecessary guilt and, um, just exhaustion. And I find one of the only things that really helps me just let go of that for a time is video games.
Yeah, it's that's a lot, and I do think that even with everything that you go through, you've made so many strides to better yourself, and I really do think that gaming has helped you along that way. I've gotten to witness it for the last decade and a half, and like I'm glad that was something that you took an interest in it along with me. So
Yeah, it really it honestly it really has helped. And when push comes to shove, like when there's really stressful things going on in my life, I tend to get down to two things. One, dealing with whatever's stressing me out, you know, the basic things I need to function, feed myself, shower, and video games. Pretty much everything else gets dropped.
yeah.
Because, I need to deal with that stress. I need to have that outlet, regardless of how much time is being spent dealing with whatever stressful thing it is. I mean, for example, when I was in university, I had one particular exam slash a paper period during one year, and it was all I did was write papers and play Art and Elico. That's all I did, and because it was, I just needed to give my brain a break, and it's one of the few things that works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the next question for you guys, like, what games specifically do you guys reach for when you're feeling down?
Yeah. So for me, I tend to pick a game I've already played, probably something I enjoy the narrative of, so I have a bit of an emotional connection to it, but I will not engage with any kind of main plot or any kind of plot really. I want the experience of kind of wandering and fighting aimless battles. I do a lot of collection quests when I'm in this like kind of mindset where I'll just like wander around the world and find all the weird items hidden here and there. Most recently, I've done this with like Ghost of Tsushima and like Horizon Zero Dawn. But yeah, usually it's a game that like made me feel something that I connect to the character with, but I just want to be alone. I just want to maybe I want to ride a horse around the countryside. I want to climb the highest mountain. I just want to be in that world.
You Genshin Impact, honey.
Is that my new go-to?
um, yeah, because that's honestly what you described is, when I'm feeling rough, like when I felt rough over the past month, which has happened quite a bit due to some medication changes. I would just wander the countryside in Genshin Impact, scale cliff sides, look for chests, random fight random enemies that popped up, like just sort of almost meditatively, but a little more engaged than that. Just wandering the countryside going, ah, the world is so beautiful.
I think you got it right on there. It's almost meditative, right? Like
Yeah.
it's something to do with your hands. It's visually beautiful. You're listening to the sound of the world and the things in it, and you're just out of your body and somewhere else, just being.
Yeah, it's
It's almost like
very
taking a stroll in the woods in a way.
it is. And and even when you have to fight the occasional enemy, it's pretty when you're in this sort of mood, you don't go for anything difficult. Like it's easy, just easy overworld fights, right? But even that's almost meditative, because it's repetitive and familiar. But yeah, I mean, and it's so fun just to go around all these little corners and find little secrets. And every once in a while I will find a rock that you can sit on in Genshin Impact, like by a cliffside and stare out over the horizon. There's actually a photo mode in Genshin Impact too, so you can have them sit down and then you can open up the photo mode to take a picture. And if you're there at the right time of day, you might catch a sunset, or it's lovely and beautiful.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's wonderful. So as for me, like I was saying, like depending on how I feel will kind of depend on what game I end up playing. But if for ones I didn't explain before, like if I'm really kind of feeling down, I think one of the biggest games that I go back to, and I've done it plenty of times, is one of the dot hack games or one of the dot hack GU games. Um, either that or I'd pop in a Monster Rancher game and I would just lose myself in raising a monster or lose myself in just running discs, seeing what monsters I could have and kind of going from there. I don't know what it was about disc running in Monster Rancher that was so therapeutic, but it always felt good to do.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was always because you never knew what you were gonna get,
Hmm.
so it was like exciting, but also kind of just a chill thing to do.
No, exactly. And yeah, it was, somebody had to be the one popping the discs in and out, especially with kind of our house situation. So somebody was always standing up, putting the discs in and out. But regardless, like just that moment of surprise when you get to see what monster popped out, that was great. It was wonderful. All right, Sky, what do you normally play? I've got a feeling, but let's see if
Well,
I'm right.
yeah. Well, usually I gravitate towards something that's personally meaningful, like cough, Suikoden, cough.
There it is. There it
Yeah, I
is.
know. I am very predictable, but it's one of those things where it's like, there's the familiarity part, but there's also it's such a wonderful thing to me that it makes me realize that not only life is not so bad and wonderful things like a game like Suikoden exists, it's just like this exists. I'm so happy this exists. It may be making, it may be sad at times, but this is something beautiful. If it's not something like that, I usually will go for something, bright and cheery and colorful. And I mean, who can feel bad while playing something like an Atelier game? Like they're so beautiful. It's just colorful and happy. And Genshin Impact also has that sort of vibe to it, like it's just like I get to explore this beautiful world filled with fun and interesting things, and it's all colorful and pretty, and I'm a simple person in some ways. But it's just folks, do what makes you happy.
Absolutely. I'm actually kind of really hoping that you get that same kind of love that you get from Suikoden from Eiyuden Chronicles when it finally comes out. So
Yeah,
I'd love to see it be your new Suikoden.
I really hope so, and I really do think it's possible. I mean, like Murayama proved that he's still got writing chops. Like the Alliance Alive was excellent, but it didn't have the scale of something like Suikoden. And you know, Eiyuden Chronicles definitely looks like it's going to, and it's got all these, and it's more deliberately modeled off Suikoden, and also to let that man loose, like, for him to not be hamstrung by, a big corporation like Konami, like the promise in that is just so delicious.
Yeah, no, definitely looking forward to it. All right. Now, one last question for you guys. And are there any games that you feel have influenced your perception of mental health?
Definitely. I love playing games that deal with mental health. The most recent one, and we've talked about this on the podcast because I was referred to it on the podcast, is Eliza. It's a game where you play as a character who's working in a mental health clinic, and you're reading a script that a virtual intelligence is making for you. And the game is sort of about like, do you deviate from the script to actually help someone? Which is like a really interesting concept. There's also Depression Quest, which I was totally like, wow, this is an incredible experience, and I feel really sad after playing it. That's one of the ones where they say this is sort of like a learning experience for you who don't struggle with depression, and it can be triggering if you do. But I mean, a lot of games do talk about mental health now. There's characters who are dealing with struggles, who have um, and you can actually talk to them and engage with them, which I think is amazing, right? It's kind of reducing the stigma around the idea that we've done surveys as part of my work where you've asked people, like, would you live near someone who had a mental illness? Would you let someone with mental illness babysit your child? Would you be friends with someone with mental illness? And the numbers are so shockingly towards no. um, it's just people are afraid, right? They don't know and they think that it's unpredictable. And I think the more we see that, who struggle with their mental health are exactly the same as everyone else, um, I think that just helps make the world a better place. So um, I really appreciate the shift in gaming towards being more positive and optimistic about mental health. There are some, especially going back a few years, that are just painful, like the way that they treat people. It's like when you look at some, especially, I've been watching a lot of sitcoms lately and reviewing kind of how they deal with trans issues. And even going back, into the 90s or the 2000s, it's just gross. Like the things that people say are just upsetting.
Yeah. That's that that's an understatement. Like those
Right?
stereotypes are so awful. And when you think about all the people, particularly all the young people who would have been hurt by that, is like it's just terrible to think about.
Exactly. Like I don't know why it should be shocking that people are just people, but like you see these stories and you just look at them now and you think, God, did I laugh at this? Did I not? Was I like, is this really what this was? Or did I just shake this off like it was nothing? And I think that's the main thing for me, when I think about kind of the perception of mental health because of gaming, is like, if we talk about it, if we see experiences and people's stories, then, our perception of mental health changes. If I understand, what it looks like for someone who's bipolar, it's not so scary to meet a person in real life who's bipolar.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and really, what a lot of people don't understand is that people with mental health issues are much more likely to hurt themselves than another. Like,
Yeah, 100%. Like the stats are totally like, as a minority,
yeah,
you are more likely to, they have all these horror stories of like, oh, there's people in the bathrooms and they're doing this, and it's like, no, like people who are minorities are always more attacked. They just want to live their lives.
Yeah, like people just want to live their lives, and people, like, they're just people. They're the same. Like, if mental illness in particular can happen to anyone, it depends on your genetics, but also your experiences. So it can literally happen to anybody. And so, like, have a little grace, like, give people a shot. Like, in the end, you're much more likely to be hurt by someone who is bound up in their own privilege than most people who have mental health issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you took that that response in a very different way than I did, Mel. I really liked it, don't get me wrong. Like I just like spot, like, for me, like, I had a lot of trouble trying to think of a game where I would find any type of perception about mental health. And the only game that I could actually come across when I thought about that was the Yakuza series, specifically because of the character Goro Majima. Like, this is a guy who, for over the course of 30 years, he basically endured different forms of physical and psychological torture at the hands of his syndicate family. Like, and if they had, because of Yakuza Zero's release, you get a much deeper understanding of those circumstances, how it affected his personality, especially in the 80s, because this is a very, very big origin story for Majima, how he ended up kind of becoming the crazy, violence toting, loving nut out there. And the weirdest part of the whole thing is that after all of this, he remained the ever loyal soldier to the syndicate. Like, I don't even know, like, what the symptoms were, what you would clinically diagnose Majima with at this point. But it's one of those reasons that would make me want to study psychology, because it was just such an interesting life that Majima experienced, to get to the point where you would see him in a game like Yakuza Kiwami, where he's just all over the place all at once.
One of the things about Yakuza and Goro specifically is that, one of the reasons why he stays the ever loyal soldier is because he has nowhere else to go. There's no other support system for guys like that. And that's where, countries like Japan have made a very serious error in, not helping people who are quote unquote criminals. Like, people are going to stay in their circumstances if you don't give them another option.
Hmm.
And, you know, eh, plus there's the added marginalization angle because Goro is, they don't say what he is, but he is not straight and he is not cisgender. I really don't think so. Like, there's some decidedly repressed queerness about Goro Majima. And whether he acknowledges it or not, that still marginalizes him, right? In that society. So, like, you not only have to look at the character himself, but the circumstances that he is in. That's what makes him a particularly good example, because one of the things that various societies are very good at is actually creating more people who are mentally ill.
No, exactly. And yeah, it's something I may study down in the future, but for now, I just remain with the mystery and the fascination. But I mean, he is really more a sympathetic character than he seems, and Yakuza Zero specifically proved that. Gave us a lot of understanding. All right, Sky, what are your games that helped you with this perception?
I actually had more trouble with this one than I thought. I mean, yes, I've played Eliza. I was the one who recommended it to Mel, but that was a more recent things. So I wanted to kind of think back to stuff that, was a bit more, long-term influential, right, on me. And what came to mind actually was Final Fantasy VI. Because if you look at its two female leads, there's a lot of dealing with mental health issues there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Terra is dealing with a lot of uncertainty and fear. Fear of herself and the powers that she has that she doesn't understand. Like, she's lost her memory and she doesn't know how to deal with people. And so, like, she's in a position that's really, really difficult and very easy to relate to by people who, have been, say, closeted, or, people who struggle with interacting with people and that sort of thing. I mean, meanwhile, you have Celes, who is basically a brainwashed human experiment in recovery. Like, she's not unlike a cult victim, for instance. Like, she was brainwashed into a very specific way of looking at the world, and then had to have deal with all that coming apart on her, and then basically had to deal with the end of the world herself. Like, and I'm not going to go into details on this because it could be triggering. Um, but she definitely has a very distinct mental health crisis after the events that screw up the world, which is one of the most powerful moments in the game, like, without question. So you've got these two women who have to find themselves in the wreckage of what other people did to them, of the circumstances that they were put into, or raised into. And that process of them sort of finding themselves in their place in the world is actually pretty inspiring to someone like me, who is also kind of dealing with finding myself in the wreckage of what other people did to me, like, or what society did to me. I mean, until, like, I didn't figure out basic things about myself until I was in my 20s and now my 30s, right? Um, so I think those two women are particularly inspiring in a way that is, sort of understated, but also very powerful, and serves the narrative also quite well. And they also don't make the mistake of connecting everything they are to their saving to a man, like, I think that's a particularly good game to play if you want to see some very realistic, despite the whole magic element and all that, realistic depiction of, people in crisis.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more powerful than we realize. And it's hard to see that in a lot of older games unless you're really, really experiencing everything within it. Like, you're going back to a system where you don't have voice acting, you don't have raw emotion coming out of characters. It's all text, it's all like 16-bit sprites, 32-bit sprites, whatever. Like, but if you really, really lean into it, you see everything that's within there. And never discount a game because of its age or its style when it comes to its ability to tell a story or depict a character, because there are games out there that will do it right, and this is clearly an example.
Well, yeah, and I mean, one of the advantages to the more limited graphics is that they were able to depict things that may have been too traumatizing to depict in a more realistic way.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the examples I've always used that is that if Suikoden 2 was made today, it would have an M rating.
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah, because of the, like, Luca Blight does some horrible fucking things in that game. Horrible, horrible things. But because it's not graphic in its depictions, they can squeak under that teen rating. But if it was done with modern 3D graphics, no way in hell.
Yeah.
No way in hell. I firmly believe that. I mean, the Die Pigs scene, for crying out loud, and those who've played it will know exactly what I mean. That's shocking in and of itself. And same principle goes with what happened with Celes in Final Fantasy VI after the world quote unquote ends. Like, holy crap. But it's easier to deal with those moments because they're made less graphic due to the limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Which can be as much a benefit because, you know, who knows if someone who might be traumatized by a more graphic depiction may be able to handle it in a more, when it's shown in a less literal, realistic way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Mel, do you have anything to jump in on this?
No, I think you're totally right.
Okay.
I feel like yeah, like this is yeah, I mean
I just mental health is a big thing for you, so I wanted to see if you had anything to add to that.
No, I mean I think we're all sort of in agreement here, right? Like it's yeah.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that has been an incredibly successful 100th episode. Again, I can never thank my co-hosts enough for doing this. And I also want to thank Sky specifically, who actually came up with the questions for this week's episode. I was having a lot of trouble, and I knew that Sky would be able to do this a lot better. So you stick to your strengths, right? And I don't know if you want to call this a strength necessarily, but at the same time, like I really appreciate the work that you did to put it on this one.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. You can never thank us enough. We're that great.
Fair.
Thank you. I mean, admittedly, the questions were very easy for me, so I'm not gonna lie about that. It wasn't a huge amount of work, but by any stretch of the imagination. But we can, however we can support you, the host, who does the bulk of the work on this. Feel free to lean on us.
Lean on me.
No more. Again, copyright issues. I don't want to
That's
pay
why
for
I only
that.
do one line. I think we get 7 notes, something like that.
Is that? Oh, okay. I didn't know how that actually
I don't
works.
know what it is.
Okay, fair enough. But anyway, yeah, if you guys have anything you want to add or converse with us about, have any questions related to mental health, you've got great people here at your disposal. You can email us as a group at xpbillionaires@gmail.com. Please do. We're not judgmental. We'll be here to help if you have it. You can also ask us individually on our social media privately if you so choose. You're more than welcome to do that. You can find me on Twitter at BillionairesXP, or even on my Gunpla Instagram at RayThegram. I will answer anything, anywhere, or at least get some answers for you if I'm able to. Sky, where can everyone find you?
I'm at SkyKnightXP on Twitter and SkyKnight.xp on Instagram.
And Mel, where can everyone find you?
Instagram at FeministGamer. And if you check out Level Up Dice on Twitch, I do a Darkness and Dragons game there on Wednesday nights, so check out.
Awesome. And don't forget to check out our website, xpbillionaires.ca. You can get our social media info. Again, you can find out our schedules. You can see our written work, our quickfire reviews, all that good stuff. Check that out. And lastly, 2 ways to help support this show. The first one, monetarily, of course, and that's through our coffee page, coffee.com/xpbillionaires. A little bit goes a long way with us, and we're more than thrilled if you're able to help. The other bit, and especially I think this one, if you have a social media that does tend to deal with mental health issues in a lot, please share this episode with it. I'd love more and more people to hear our stories and be able to share these experiences. And yeah, it'll just help grow this channel. I think that's very important. So please, if you can. Alrighty, so that's going to be it. That's 100 episodes down. God only knows how many to go. But, the only advice I can give you this time around is that if it helps you feel better, then by all means, keep gaming. Very important. Please do it. And we'll see you next week.
So long.
Bye bye.